And I'm back. Sorry again for the long delay. Some personal issues, and then also God decided to punish me for my hubris, or as in adult terms, I didn't wear enough clothes outside and I got sick. So, I think we're going to go back to reading this obvious work of fiction and enjoying ourselves a little bit more, being a little bit more hyperbolic, a little bit more extreme, having a little bit more fun with it all. But I'm sure that'll show itself in my reading. So let's just begin. Let's just jump right into it with the Surah number 19 called Mary. I'm looking forward to my new title. A Meccan Surah which takes its name from the story of Mary, verses 16 to 35. It recounts the grace given by God to a number of prophets and tells aspects of their stories. The claim that Jesus is the Son of God is firmly denied, as is the assertion of the pagans of Mecca that the angels are God's daughters. From verses 66 to 98, the surah discusses the arrogant assertions of the disbelievers of Mecca. The prophet is told that God's punishment is coming to them and exhorted not to be impatient for it to arrive or to receive the revelation. Not to be impatient, sure. Yeah, good. I mean, a week has passed and nothing's changed. Who would have thought? Kaf ha ya ein sad. That's interesting. There's new letters. A lot of new letters too. Kaf ha ya ein sad. Interesting. I'll leave this here. This is a reminder of your Lord's mercy to his servant Zechariah, when he cried out to his Lord privately, saying, "My Lord, surely my bones have become brittle, and grey hair has spread across my head. But I have never been disappointed in my prayer to you, my Lord." We just read the introduction, and this feels like it came out of nowhere. Obviously, it's most of the Mary stuff is later. Okay, most of the things the introduction deals with comes later, but very fascinating. So a reminder of your Lord's mercy. I don't believe that's a thing. Saying, "My Lord, surely my bones have become brittle and disappointed. I've never been disappointed in my prayer to you, my Lord." Okay. "And I am concerned about the faith of my relatives after me, since my wife is barren. So grant me your by your." Okay. So yeah, the thing I was thinking about, I almost forgot to mention. Weirdly, in the introduction, we get this sort of reminder that he's not really talking to me, or the Muhammad, the Prophet, the book isn't really talking to me. It's not really addressing me. It's addressed to Christians and the pagans of the Arabian Peninsula. It's sort of a weird thing because this word disbeliever means just critic, just person who doesn't believe what the Prophet is saying. It's hilarious. In context with everything else we've read, and at this point I almost want to go back and point at it just to laugh at it, but it's almost worthy of doing a reread after I've completed, to have the context of what disbeliever means is critic of the Prophet. Anyone who does not accept him, what he says is true, is inherently a disbeliever, whatever their reasons for not accepting the truth of this, I want to say this gospel, but the word games, I can just imagine them already. And we're back to drinking excessive amounts of Pepsi Max. Yay me! So yeah. "I'm concerned about the faith of my relatives after me, since my wife is barren. So grant me by your grace an ear." That's a very interesting thing. Interesting line of reasoning here. It's like he's pulling a fast one on God. It's like, well, actually, the reason I want a son is not, I'm not being selfish. I'm just concerned about the people after me. Will they have the right faith? Will they understand and have a good connection to God? It's not for my own sake. It's for other people's sake. It's like, that's how you get things from God. I guess that's why Zechariah has never been disappointed, because he knows how to speak to God. He knows how to speak to this abusive God you have. I mean, yeah, I get that. To be fair, though, that makes sense in this context of this abusive God. You have certain people who, like, if you're a victim of abuse enough, if you're in an abusive relationship enough, you eventually like learn the things. I don't know, actually, I haven't been in an abusive relationship, but it seems to me that people end up sort of learning how to phrase themselves to avoid the ire of the person they're talking to, learning how to phrase themselves to sort of get their point, get their goals across, get their own, achieve the things they want to achieve, even in the sort of framework of this viciously abusive framework. So yeah, I mean, I struggle to think of good examples of this, but yeah, Zechariah here pulling a fast one on God. So grant me by your grace an heir who will inherit profited from me and the family of Jacob, and make him, O Lord, pleasing to you. The angels announced, O Zechariah, indeed we will give you the good news of the birth of a son, whose name will be John, a name we have not given to anyone before. Very cool. The angels come in and give us. I mean, that's just a hilarious thing to imagine. It's like, what's the thing? The kid, Elon Musk's kid. What's his name? I want to Google it, but I have an unsafe browsing situation open. But yeah, it's like he's an A in his name, which is a letter I'm not even sure that most English speakers know how to pronounce. But yeah, no, this seems like this kind of scenario. Zechariah is like, I like this name. I don't know anyone who has this name, but I'm gonna, and that God gave it to me. Yeah, the angels said, isn't. If only Elon Musk was a little bit more of a cult leader, we would have so much more fun. He wondered, my Lord, how can I have a son when my wife is barren and I have become extremely old? This is such a weird, because I know the story is obviously, maybe it isn't obviously, but it feels like I've heard the story before, and it's like very similar to this idea of miracle by, well, my wife is barren, so clearly, I mean, it's very easy to imagine these Bronze Age nomads, Stone Age nomads at the point, not at the, I mean, at the point that the story was written, I guess it was Iron Age, but like these old stories from these old people, and having this idea that, yeah, my wife is barren. Yeah, she's 35, but she's had no children, and we've had so much sex. You get the impression that when people don't know anything, it's very much these sentences contain a lot of different connotations, a lot of very different baggage. When we today say my wife is barren, we have some evidence for this, not just, well, we've been trying to have kids for so long and I haven't. Maybe it means by barren, maybe they understood the concept of menopause and maybe like that was a big deal. But to be clear, like whether or not they would have a good a good way of testing when a woman has gone through menopause is clearly not, like, sure, if I accept that by barren it means has gone through menopause, then this would be very miraculous, but very fun. But yeah, no, it's a weird flipping of the context here, or sort of, it starts with Zechariah like praying to God, like, you will give me please give me an heir who will inherit profited from me, right? And it sort of sounds like he's asking for a child. Obviously, like the phrasing an heir could be just anyone who sort of continue my culture, continue my beliefs to the future. Like I want my legacy to be preserved. That is a very like normal human desire. It's a part of our sort of grappling with our mortality, which of course all religious texts are really deeply about this. Humans trying to grapple with the fact that they have limited times to exist, and this sort of being an uncomfortable reality. That people genuinely go away when they die, rather than just go somewhere else and you'll meet them again. Yay, and we can all be happy together. Like, is it a wonder I call it childish? But yeah, so this hilarity continues with Zechariah has asked for an heir, and the angels say, yeah, we're going to give you a son. like, what are you talking about? No, I can't do that. My wife can't do that. But yeah. So there we are. He wondered, "My lord, how can I have a son?" Yeah. The angel replied, so will it be. Your Lord says, it is easy for me, just as I created you before when you were nothing. Zechariah said, whatever. My Lord, grant me a sign. He responded, your sign is that you will not be able to speak to people for 3 nights, despite being healthy. God has such a weird way of, like, such punishing signs. I mean, I guess it makes sense for, like, a divine, infinite being to sort of not really understand how humans interact together and sort of not understand the value of human. I know it would take a lot for me to genuinely, like, I would imagine I would hallucinate. Most of my explanations for seeing God would be, oh, I did too many drugs in my life. Not even, like, even if I hadn't taken any drugs recently, like, it's you there are many ways of sort of expecting, and like, maybe I'm mentally ill, like, that's what I expect when I expect, like, having an interaction with God. So I'll, to be clear on that, I obviously would take a lot, but there is so much tinier evidence, so much less sort of intrusive ways to sort of hint to people, because these are all just hints. None of them are more or less conclusive than actually seeing God. They're all very subtle little tricks to sort of get people to understand. But I mean, from the context I'm reading this in, clearly Zechariah said, well, I'm just gonna not say anything for 3 days. That's how I'm gonna prove my God. It's like, my mother said something to me very many years ago, which was very interesting. I want to tell this story. I was out running, out playing in the grass, and I had not a care in the world. A young boy. I had no care for my clothes or how I looked. My knees were extremely green from having fallen or crawled around or done whatever I could in these white beige shorts, I believe they were. And when I came back, my mother, like, reacted like, "Oh my God, I'm never going to be able to wash these." And I felt upset. I felt like I'd betrayed her trust in a way. So when I was watching TV later and I saw this ad come up, and it was like, specifically said, you know, all of these spots you get when your kid goes out playing in the mud, we'll get rid of them. Greenery, oh, no problem. Like, it's called Ganska in Norwegian. We'll fix it. And so I was like, Mom, come see, they look at this, we'll fix it. And my mom laughed a little bit when she saw what it was, and she looked at me and said, you have to understand, my son. They'll say whatever they can to get you to buy their product. And likewise, Zechariah, Muhammad, Jesus, Abraham, Moses, they'll say whatever they can to get you to profess faith. So in reading this in the same way, reading this with a little bit of skepticism, we ask ourselves if Zach really was mute or just decided not to speak, because those things are very hard for anyone else to distinguish. But I guess from Zach's point of view, it was obvious proof. So he came out to his people from the sanctuary, signaling to them to glorify Allah morning and evening. It was later said, "O John, hold firmly to the scriptures." And we granted him wisdom while he was still a child, as well as purity and compassion from us. And he was God-fearing and kind to his parents. He was neither arrogant nor disobedient. It's such a fascinating thing, because this is, like, really exemplifies why this is an abusive relationship. It's implied, or it's sometimes even stated, it is arrogant to reject God. It's arrogant to criticize, like, be disobedient to your parents. Is it not the parents' arrogance to insist that their rules are the only good ones, and that their children can have no value to give to their understanding of morality and how to treat people? Is it not the arrogance of Muhammad to say that he definitely has a clear and accurate revelation from God and nothing could have corrupted this in any way? Is this not more arrogant? And that's why I started the last episode. I'm glad I remember we started that episode. Is it not, like, what was the quote? Ask yourself who is more arrogant. The scientist who accepts whatever the universe has to, whatever information the universe shows him, or the zealot. I don't remember the quote exactly, but I'm going to bastardize it. Or the zealot who insists on their interpretation from the on the literal truth of their book. It's such a fascinating idea that here we have a text accusing critics of being arrogant. I mean, I guess I want to call it projection, but I guess it's really good, because if you preempt the obvious criticism, like, who are you to claim this kind of knowledge? No, I'm not. I said it first. You're the arrogant one, right? And it's like, it's, oh, damn it, you caught me there. It's like good rhetoric, good sophistry. Peace be upon him the day he was born, and the day of his death, and the day he will be raised back to life. And mention in the book, O prophet, the story of Mary when she withdrew from her family to a place in the east, screening herself off from them. Then we sent to her our angel Gabriel, appearing before her as a man perfectly formed. She appealed, I truly seek refuge in the most compassionate from you. So leave me alone if you are God-fearing. So I'm guessing, I mean, we should read on, but it sounds like she thought he was a rapist, and so leave me alone if you're God-fearing. I mean, we could look it up. Maybe it says something fascinating in my text. I'm not going to look up the tafsirs again, because that was really frustrating last time. Can mean abstinence from food or from speech, I see. So, yeah, it's abstinence, choice abstinence. Do not approach. If you have any fear. Okay. So yeah, she met a dark stranger out traveling one day, and apparently this was the angel Gabriel, and she said, please go away from me. If you fear God, if you are God fearing, I guess it was important. I guess it's a good threat. If you have nothing else to threaten anyone with. If you are a frail woman out walking in the world of petty tyrants and kings, it might be very useful to be able to say, if you do anything bad to me, you'll be punished afterwards. He responded with, so the angel Gabriel responded with, I am only a messenger from your Lord, sent to bless you with a pure son. She wondered, how can I have a son when no man has ever touched me? Nor am I unchaste. Nor am I unchaste. Because to me that means, like, unchaste. Chaste means you don't have sex. Unchaste means you do have sex. I mean, it's a bit of a double negative situation here. So, am I chaste? I am chaste is, I guess, the double negative. How can I have a son when no man has ever touched me, nor am I unchaste? I have not been unchaste. Oh, I guess, yeah. She's still interpreting this as some weirdo, as she should. To be fair, some weirdo is telling her she's gonna have a son. I'm here to bless you with a pure son. Honestly, if somebody said that, I'm sent to bless you with a pure son. The rapist idea, probably more accurate than maybe we believed. He replied, so will it be. Your Lord says, it is easy for me, and so we will make him a sign for humanity and a mercy from us. It is a matter already decreed. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing. Like, it's easy for me. It's been repeated twice, but it's sort of, it escapes the obvious obvious way of criticizing this is like, well, can't we think of a more likely explanation, a more plausible one, where we don't, no, God can do anything. Everything that God can do is obviously plausible, no matter what it is. Like, whatever God has said he does, it's absolutely more plausible than God doing literally any, or nothing, yeah. But it sort of misses the point here. What's interesting is, can we think of another explanation? Yeah, we can very easily think of another explanation. Mary was raped. Mary was raped by somebody, and she didn't have easy abortion access or whatever. She raised this child to adulthood and became Jesus. Rape babies are sometimes not bad, I guess. Yeah, no, it's this phrasing of, it is easy for me. Well, yeah, it's also easy for you to lie. It's easy for everyone involved to simply state something not true. It's been implied earlier that that's a hard thing to do, that how could I dare speak the truth when I know, like, God's honest truth, when I know this is what God wants. It's like, yeah, you could think you know God's honest truth without knowing God's. This is much easier to believe, much more plausible, much easier to understand, because a lot of people have done that. A lot of people, like, I'm sure most Muslims watching this will agree with me. Most people have this idea of God that they've invented themselves. And so it's much easier for me to imagine, well, what if this isn't just another one of those? And all of this insistence on, I can only tell the truth, how could I dare not to tell the truth? It would be equally true for anyone else saying it about any other topic. It doesn't, like, the idea that it's hard for people to lie is just nonsense. It's very easy for people to lie. Let's get the energy in. Okay. It is a matter already decreed. So she conceived him and withdrew with him to a remote place. The rape baby. Jesus, the rape baby. And then the pains of labor drove her to the trunk of a palm tree. She cried, "Alas, I wish I had died before this, and this was a thing long before gotten, I guess." So a voice. I'm so glad I clicked that. This was the voice of baby Jesus. Baby Jesus. I can't read and think baby Jesus without baby Jesus. You can say it so fast. Baby Jesus. Baby Jesus. It's such a wonderful. But yeah. This was the voice of baby Jesus. Yeah, 100%. So a voice reassured her from below her, "Do not grieve. Your Lord has provided a stream at your feet." Her water broke. "And shake the trunk of this palm tree towards you. It will drop fresh ripe dates upon you." Interesting. So presumably we can use this to date, pun not intended, but I did notice it before I said it, so I guess pun intended. We could use this to date the birth, or the season in which, well, to be fair, that's something we've already realized, is that Islam isn't really great at doing the whole season judging thing, given the whole moon as a basis for the year thing. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to go into what people have told me to respond to that, but wow, it's a fascinating one. So yeah, maybe autumn. I don't know when dates ripen. I'm guessing it's in the fall, when everything falls. "So eat and drink and put your heart at ease. But if you see any of the people say, 'I have vowed silence.'" See, I told you it was just fast from speech. Yeah, linguistically, so means to abstain from something, such as food, speaking. Wait. Which is interesting, because that was the first note here. But it's sort of, it wasn't a note. You're about to abstain from conversation. It wasn't a note from the other one, when Zach was not able to speak, where in this case it's very clearly implied that she was able to, she just decided not to. Say, "I vowed silence to the most compassionate, so I'm not talking to anyone today." Yeah, it's a good excuse. Honestly, I wish I was religious. I had so many good excuses I've missed out on. I have vowed silence to the most compassionate. So I'm not talking. I should write that down. Then she returned to her people, carrying him. They said in shock, "Oh, Mary, you have certainly done a horrible thing. O sister of Aaron, your father was not an indecent man, nor was your mother unchaste." Yeah, it's this sort of his twin image. I mean, didn't expect to do something big like Aaron. Okay. Yeah, I mean, victim blaming was a thing back in the day. Not surprising. Well, I guess maybe they just thought she was a harlot. maybe they just thought she had cheated on Joseph. I don't remember these characters anymore. It's been so long. They're so uninteresting. She pointed to the right. She pointed to the baby. They exclaimed, "How can we talk to someone who is an infant in the cradle?" Good question. Jesus. Oh God. The mental image. The mental images in this chapter is just great. And Jesus declared, "I am truly a servant of Allah. He has destined me to be given the scripture and to be a prophet." Why do they actually translate that? And why shouldn't that just be God? It's sort of a very fascinating separation. I mean, obviously, word choice is weirdly, like, Muslims are weirdly fanatical about the correct choice of words. But it's sort of, this means God. Sure, it means the only true God, and like it has all of these weights and connotations, but so does capital G God. That's the whole weight and connotations. It has other weights and connotations, but that's like the culture. Like, you should translate it to God. Maybe it is interesting. It probably is. In my version, like, I stopped using my version because I think the transcription was bad. But I'm just gonna double check because I think that, yeah, I'm a servant of God. Yeah, I'm a servant of God. Yeah, I'm gonna do it myself because it's just very silly to sort of specify sort of the language in which you need to refer to God. I mean, I guess it makes sense from this weird context of the holiness of the Arabic language, but which has remained uncorrupted. Well, even though there's many different variants and dialects, but I guess only the scripture itself has remained uncorrupted. And of course, it's impossible for you. It's so easy, so trivial for me to see. Okay, never mind. So baby Jesus, lying in the cradle, declares, "I am truly a servant of God. He has destined me to be given the scripture and to be a prophet." I mean, this is a much better life of Brian than the one we got. Well, to be fair, maybe the one we got was as funny as it could be. "He has made me a blessing wherever I go, and bid me to establish prayer and give alms tax as long as I live, and to be kind to my mother. He has not made me arrogant or defiant." Why be proud of your lack of defiance and lack of rebellion? I mean, I guess it's just a big culture clash. Okay, maybe that's the culture war here. Is like, and maybe that's why. Because usually what I've realized is there's a lot more overlap between the right-wing politics and Islamic politics. Like, there's a lot of, like, obviously different gods or different Allah they decide to reference, but different holy books and all of that. But it's similar sort of regressive authoritarianism in the sense of sort of controlling people's lives because for puritanical reasons. But in this sense, it sort of reminds me more of these kinds of phrases remind me more of the sort of left-wing alliance implications, because the left has a very sort of a lot of people have speculated it's sort of anti-racist and like the goal is to sort of be welcoming and accepting of all cultures, including the ones that aren't welcoming and accepting of all cultures, like Islam. But it's sort of these kinds of phrases, and so it seems very paradoxical when you think about it like that. But in this context, it makes a lot of sense, because it's like these this sort of collectivist thinking, and that's a very fundamental part of like all of the Muslims I've spoken to, and like how they speak to me and how I sort of interact and how I sort of see their communities is like not as something I want. By the way, it's fascinatingly very clear to me that religion is not suited for me. But you sort of get the I sort of realize that a lot of like it seems like what a lot of the left in the West sort of miss is this sense of community and inclusion, and it's sort of a lot of our politics are sort of about creating this sense of a community and inclusion with the people who sort of they pity and sort of do it that way. But here, but Islam has sort of done it via the traditional route of religion. Fascinating that. And of course, it's the same sort of thing that. But yeah, I brought it up in the context of this sort of rebelliousness, this sort of Western culture of mockery and defiance and criticism. Like defiance and imagine yourself in 1984. I don't know how. I'm assuming all Muslims have only read the Quran, at least based on my conversations with them. But if they've read 1984, isn't defiance in this world a good? Like, isn't the defiance of was it Surah 9, Surah 6, the Sword Surah I called it? Isn't that sort of the sort of defiance against oppressors? And there's the hints of being to religious oppression has been throughout. I don't remember which ones exactly, but there have been several references to religious oppression, and sort of defiance against these things is obviously a good thing. But it's this weirdness, this weird implication being here that it's not defiance against religion. It's not defiance against the one true God, and the one I'm bringing to you. That's the one true God. Okay, now it makes sense again. Sorry, I forgot. I explained it to myself. Peace be upon me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I will be raised back to life. That is Jesus. I'm just curious about this interesting phrasing. It's a good sort of poetic parameter. It's like triple the rule of threes and all of that. But that is Jesus, son of Mary, and this is a word of truth about which they dispute. Yeah, probably, I would argue, not very true. Bid me to establish prayer and give alms. Okay. It is not for God to take a son. Glory be to him. When he decrees a matter, he simply tells it be, and it is. So the whole squabble is a word game. It's a semantic point. Well, he's not really his son because God doesn't have sex with people and doesn't make children and so. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not going to defend Christians, but I very much doubt Christians don't think that. I make fun of Christians by implying that they think what you think they think. And what my job is to make them, like, as an atheist, and virulently anti-theistic atheist, is to make them realize that actually you can use different words and you'll realize that actually it's the same thing. Actually, realize that how absurd the thing they believe is. And like, I have to work a little bit to get them into this weird position that I guess it's just a straw man. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. Why are you straw manning a stupid religion? Well, I guess because you're also a stupid religion. So I guess that's the only way religions manage to get one over on each other. They have to straw man each other to death because they're all equally stupid. Jesus also declared, surely God is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him alone. This is the straight path. What a boring path. Oh, no, I mean, I guess that could be taken twice. I always said that. I always wish I was I wish I was bisexual, because then there's twice as many beautiful people in the world. Now I only get half as much fun. Like the crooked path is much more enlightening. Cover a lot more ground over the crooked. Well, depending if you mean like covering ground in the sort of metaphorical sense of getting somewhere quickly, versus covering ground in the sort of mathematical sense of covering a large area. Yet their various groups have differed among themselves about him. So woe to the disbelievers when they face a tremendous day. Yet their various groups have differed among themselves about him. So, because there are different sects of Christians, I mean, you do see, there's a phrase, don't throw stones in glass houses. Maybe don't throw stones in glass houses. Maybe don't criticize differences of interpretation, differences of how to interpret, how to apply God's will, when obviously all human beings have differences. It's like, you shouldn't be ashamed of this. It's hard for me to sort of say what I want to say here, because I want to make fun of how stupid this is. But I'm afraid if I do so, you'll get a sort of wrong impression that what I'm saying is, no, it's because you have different opinions. And actually, if you defend my accusation of having different opinions, and actually you convince me that all Muslims believe the same, that's not a good thing. If you convince me that actually all Muslims really believe the same core thing and it's just sort of inconsequential squabbling about the details, that's not actually the goal. If you do that, I think worse of Islam than I do of other religions, because other religions are open to being wrong, because humans are fallible. They make mistakes. I guess other religions aren't really open to being wrong. Other non-religions, political ideologies, and so on. These are more open. I guess political ideologies are rarely open to being wrong. Other ways of thinking are more adaptable to change and confusion and sort of having different opinions, because that's how people are. People have different interpretations, and sort of understanding that people have different interpretations is a good and wise thing to do. I very much recommend it. But here we have sort of criticizing the concept of having different ideas while still representing a religion who in the 1400 years since that has had a lot of differing ideas about exactly what God wants them to do, ranging from kill everyone to just don't eat pork. I don't drink and don't gamble and don't eat pork. Don't eat bacon and kill everyone. It's quite an extreme range of interpretations, and both of them are just interpreting the Word of God, and both of them are applying their own views to God and saying, this is what God means. When everyone who has a brain should be able to look through that and say, that's what you think God means. That's your interpretation of what God means. That's what you, at a certain point in time, you had to actively engage with this information. And you are the point of failure here. It's not God. It's not even the prophet. It's you. You are, me sitting right here is as fallible, inherently as fallible as any of you were the first time you read it, or the second time, or the 15th time. The point being that human beings are fallible, therefore we will have differing opinions, differing interpretations. We'll make mistakes as we go along. It's all part of the fun of life. That's a good rant. I'm glad I got that rant out off my chest. Let's go on. Yeah. So we just dealt with variety, how the various groups have differed amongst themselves about him, so woe to the disbelievers when they face a tremendous day. Yeah, about Jesus, various groups have differed about their interpretations of Jesus. Unsurprising. How clearly will they hear and see on the day they will come to us? But today the wrongdoers are clearly astray. Nah, that's kind of the point. They're not clearly astray. Like, even in the context of writing this book, if they were clearly astray, you wouldn't need to do this. You wouldn't need to do a revelation. You wouldn't need the warnings of the prophets if they were clearly astray. But no, because this is a language trick, and that's the whole of this book. It's all a big old language trick. It's all semantic nonsense. Here the language trick is, well, actually, I am telling the truth, and they're clearly wrong, and they're clearly all like it's this sort of cynicism is the antidote to sophistry. Be able to use negative words about positive things and positive words about negative things, and you won't fall for this tripe. And warn them, O prophet, of the day of regret, when all matters will be settled, while they are engrossed in heedlessness and disbelief. True. And the day of regret. That's a nice one for me, because obviously for everyone else it's the day of resurrection and the day of rebirth, but for me it's a day of regret, when I'm definitely going to regret rebelling against the abusive tyrant God. No, the tyrant God indeed. Indeed, it is we who will succeed the earth and whoever is on it, and to us they will all be returned. And mention in the book, O prophet, the story of Abraham. He was surely a man of truth and a prophet. See, this is the word game nonsense. It's like, he was surely a man of truth and a prophet. I am surely only telling the truth. And how could I not be telling the truth how could I lie before God? But I'm surely telling the truth. There is no God. See how easy it is? Yeah, it's such a. I mean, I guess maybe it makes sense sort of. Instead of sort of, I guess it's more easy to read. Mention the story of Abraham. Instead of just having that, mention the story of Abraham, and sort of explains why you should mention it. But you can just get to the point. Like, yeah, remember when he said to his father, "Oh dear father, why do you worship what can neither hear nor see nor benefit you at all?" Exactly. What can neither? Okay, so he's describing the gods that Abraham's father is worshipping as beings that can neither hear nor see, nor benefit you at all. And it's like, well, so if I try to sort of apply this to sort of this a naturalistic, a materialistic understanding of reality, and sort of understanding that these are the forces of the wind, the forces of the tides, the sort of understanding of the mechanics of it. These things can't hear, they can't see, they're unconscious, unthinking beings. And so in a very real sense, they're not going to actively benefit you. They're not going to work towards your goals. They're not going to save you from God in the end. It's like, no, the points we're making, and it seems I'm going to give Abraham father my own sort of position here, sort of impose my worldview onto him, so that I can feel like text is actually talking to me and not just rambling on about everyone else. It's sort of, what can neither hear nor see. If I am believing if I'm studying the natural world and understanding how it works together, I can use this understanding, this knowledge, to benefit me. But I'm sort of not gaining. I can't say that these will come and protect me against God. I'm saying that God is just what you perceive as God is just the sum of many other smaller, non-sentient, non-hearing, non-seeing, non-thinking agents, just forces of nature that are sort of just happen. Well, like maybe they have a reason for happening, but I have no need for God to explain that they happen, or indeed the way they happen. So it's just sort of a weird thing, like what can neither hear nor see, and it's like, yeah, that's what we say to you. Like, the thing you're worshipping is an invention that only exists in your head, and the only reason it can hear and see anything is because you can hear and see things, and you add to it according to what you hear and see. And this sort of the impressiveness of the fact that a lot of different people have a similar idea of what this concept means. That's how concepts work. That's how the idea world works. It's like when I say a triangle, we all have roughly the same idea. It doesn't mean triangles are magical or holy or spiritual or whatever. It just means that the concepts can exist in multiple minds, even though they are sort of inventions of our own minds. If I describe, like, a unicorn doesn't need to describe it or exist in reality for several people to understand what I mean when I say a unicorn. For this concept to be ubiquitous or possessed by several different people. It's not really... Yeah, I guess it's not really that impressive. I'm going very slow today, but it's more fun. Oh, dear Father, I have certainly received some knowledge which you have not received. So follow me and I will guide you to the straight path. How is it that this book can accuse anyone of arrogance and people take it seriously? I have certainly received some knowledge which you have not received. Is literally stated like by Abraham, like as the things this book states as good, like the prophets and the sort of the messengers from God. The messengers for God were clearly assholes of the highest order and arrogant as fuck too. He sees his father, engages with his father, and it goes, well, your point of view is clearly stupid. I clearly have more knowledge than you. That's why we disagree. It's not because you have more knowledge and understanding than I. It's because I have more knowledge and understanding than you. So it was okay, by the way, when Abraham was defiant and arrogant towards his parents. So follow me and I will guide you. Oh, dear Father, do not worship Satan. Surely Satan is ever rebellious against the most compassionate. Do not worship the enemy. Surely the enemy is ever rebellious against... I'm going to do that with Satan too, because that's what Satan means in the original Hebrew. That's what it means. Like the function, like how we talk... Like it's the same thing I talked about earlier when I sort of said, why use Allah and God, not God? And I sort of reflected, well, maybe Allah has different baggage, different connotations, different sort of implications, things we think about when we hear the term. And similarly, Satan. Like at this point in history, Satan has a lot of baggage. At the point in history even when this was written, but especially before that, in the sort of in the writing of the Bible a little bit, and mostly in the writing of the Old Testament, you get this idea that Satan is just sort of, he's a literary device. He's the devil's advocate. So not sure exactly how much this sort of idea of Satan had already been sort of developed at this point in time, because obviously the Satan in the New Testament is slightly more sort of antagonistic and engaging, and sort of he's tempting Jesus actively in the desert. Although to be fair, that still works in this sort of context of devil's advocate, right? Jesus went out to fast in the desert for 40 days or whatever, and he was tempted by the devil. And like in the same way, if you went out to sort of reflect and meditate on your beliefs, you would, a good critical thinker, at least, not you necessarily, but a good critical thinker would reflect on their ideas and criticize them. They would sort of set up this character, this Satan, this devil, to sort of advocate for the opposite position. And so the word, like thinking, when you read Satan, you should think of as the enemy. Like that's what the point of Satan was. And sure, in some contexts, it's sort of clear that Satan is sort of an actual being, or at least in the context of the Quran, is sort of an actual being. But I think it's very important here, especially here, because here it is a little bit ambiguous. Here it isn't necessarily clear that Abraham's father is literally worshipping Satan. It's more that Abraham's father is glorifying the enemy of God. Either by demeaning or diminishing what God has done in Abraham's eyes, or sort of undermining Abraham's faith in various ways, or criticizing it in various ways, or sort of engaging in devil's advocacy on his own part. Here it sort of seems like do not worship Satan contains a little bit more information, or a little bit different maybe just information than what we would interpret this as. Like he's probably not talking about like Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. He's probably not talking about this, what they're called, the circus freaks. He's not talking about, they haven't, there's such a good name. I love that name. I've forgotten what it is, but it's a name for, it's not like groupies or something. No, I can't remember. But like the circus people are, they have this, that's what Anton is. Not just a disgruntled social worker. He's not just a disgruntled retail employee. He's like a person who's engaged with a lot of debauchery and sin, and seeing people sort of one day go wild with all of the crazy antics they will do, and then the next day they go to church and pretend that nothing happened last night. So it's sort of, that's the problem I think with using Satan at this point, is that we do have some ideas of what Satan is, and it has a lot to do with this sort of rebellion against puritanical notions. So if we read this as Abraham's father rejecting the sort of puritanicalism of Abraham, then I think we're reading it very ahistorically. I think the historical reading is, do not worship the enemy. Surely the enemy is ever rebellious against the most compassionate. O dear Father, I truly hear that you will be touched by torment from the most compassionate and become the enemy's companion in hell. He threatened, how dare you reject my idols, O Abraham? If you do not desist, I will certainly stone you to death. So be gone from me for a long time. Honestly, Abraham being the asshole, he like literally, clearly I know better than you. Don't worship evil. It's like, that's what we, like, I think the baggage thing is still a little bit of an open question, but like, don't worship idols. Don't worship other things. Your gods are clearly stupider and worse than mine. My God is better than your God. Like, yeah, I would tell Abraham to go fuck off. Like, clearly, I mean, I would argue that it is a failure of him as a parent, but still. Abraham responded, peace be upon you. I will pray to my Lord for your forgiveness. He has truly been most gracious to me. As I distance myself from all of you and from whatever you invoke besides God, I will continue to call upon my Lord alone, trusting that I will never be disappointed in invoking my Lord. Yeah, faith is the belief that God loves you, despite all the evidence. So after he had left them and what they worshipped besides God, we granted him Isaac and Jacob, and made each of them a prophet. That's like his reward for rejecting Abraham's idols. We showered them with our mercy. I mean, to be clear, yeah, like I said, it's like their reward from getting from God. And like I'm sure many Muslims are like, yeah, he's getting it. And like, no, let me be clear here. Obviously this is what happens. Abraham breaks up with his father, who threatens to stone him to death because he is so insufferable. And yeah, obviously, Abraham was a religious zealot. Like, I'm often arguing in favor of Abraham because he's sort of my prime example of this sort of moral progress in sort of gradual steps. Is like, I think it's a really bad thing to cut off children's genitals. Whether or not you cut off just the tip or the whole thing, I think it's a really bad thing. I think you shouldn't do that. I think that's immoral. I think it's more immoral to kill them. I think it's more immoral to kill a child just because for whatever inventions and delusions you have. But it's still bad. Circumcision is still bad, but much worse to kill the child. So for me, it sort of seems like Abraham made a good moral progress. But let's be clear, zealot. He was overwhelmingly sort of convinced of his own beliefs, and sure, he needed to sort of be that in order to sort of bring moral progress in this regressive ancient society. I don't know if it was regressive. Maybe it was very progressive for its time. But to then say that his sons then sort of inherited his zealousness and proselytizing this new religion, not very surprising, is it? It's exactly what you'd expect if it wasn't true as well. That's kind of the thing. If it was just the delusions, like if we made God in our own image, this would also happen. If Abraham made God in his own image, he made Allah in his own image. We showered them with our mercy and blessed them with honorable mention. On a daily basis, Muslims invoke Allah's blessing upon Prophet Muhammad and his family and Prophet Abraham and his family. Okay. Honorable mentions. We included you in your prayer. Honorable mentions. I mean, honorable mentions already had that connotation to me, but it's sort of. I was honestly expecting it to be a more boring religious. And that one time when we were on that situation, we invoked his name and we showed how true. Like, I was expecting it to be one big sort of event, but no, it's like, well, as gratitude for proselytizing God's word, we mention them every day as thanks. Fascinating. Also kind of, that's a side note I won't go into. And mention in the book, O Prophet, the story of Moses. He was truly a chosen man, and was a messenger and a prophet. We called him from the right side of Mount Tur, I'm not sure how you pronounce those, and drew him near, speaking with him directly. And we appointed for him, out of our grace, his brother Aaron as a prophet. Also what you'd expect if it wasn't really God, if it was just family connections. It was just these, like, if Moses had a mental breakdown, yeah, you'd kind of expect support from his family, not necessarily from everyone else. It would be more surprising to me if God named, not necessarily, I guess, because stupidity loves company, but it's not surprising that family members engage in the same sort of delusional thinking that their other family members do. And mention in the book, O Prophet, the story of Ishmael. He was truly a man of his word, and was a messenger and a prophet. Truly a man of his word. He used to urge his people to pray and give alms tax, and his Lord was well pleased with him. And mention in the book, O Prophet, the story. I like that. That's a good Ishmael. You got. I know Abraham got more lines than you, and obviously Muhammad gets way too many lines. But that's just a nice little one. It's like, remember the story of Ishmael? He used to urge people to pay his taxes, to pray and pay taxes. The Lord was well pleased with him. No notes. Moving on. I like that. No notes. That's what God gave him. Like, yeah, pretty good. I like it. You did good. You need. I don't know if they have that in Islam. Maybe God Himself judges you. So far, it sort of seems to be implied. But having this sort of Saint Peter at the pearly gates gives us a lot of comedic value, because you can very easily imagine here Ishmael going up to the whole, like, the pearly gates, and being like, and God or Saint Peter or whoever it is sitting in judgment of him being like, yeah, you used to urge people to pray and give alms tax. Yeah, pretty good. No notes. Get in. Good mental image. And mention in the book, O Prophet, the story of Enoch. He was surely a man of truth and a prophet. Interesting. Not a messenger this time, because I think all of the other ones were messengers as well. Isaac and Jacob, I guess, were just not interesting. Maybe it means nothing, but interesting that it's usually you go for repetition in poetry. It's much more easy to remember. And we elevated him to an honorable status. It's said to be in the fourth heaven. Let's not get into literal hierarchies of heavens. Fourth heaven. Fourth, I mean, we do have this sort of seventh heaven nonsense as well. I've never dove into how that, because that seems like I mean, I guess it's my Protestant bias, being raised Protestant. We don't have weird obsessions with hierarchies, or at least, I guess it's a sort of rebelliousness as well. If they had insisted on hierarchies that early, I probably would have rejected it much earlier. Those were some of the prophets who God has blessed from among the descendants of Adam, and of those we carried with Noah in the ark, and of the descendants of Abraham and Israel, and of those we rightly guided and chose. Whenever the revelations of the Most Compassionate were recited to them, they fell down, prostrating and weeping. So, translated into cynic speak, whenever they heard the things they wanted to convince others to believe in, they acted the part. They prostrated themselves and started weeping. Good actors is what I hear here. But let's see what the note says. Israel is another name for Jacob. Yeah, cool. They were succeeded by generations who neglected prayer and followed their lusts, and so will soon face the evil consequences. Oh. The word guy can either mean the evil consequences or a valley in hell where they will be punished. Oh, I see. Interesting. Such a clear and unambiguous language, except when it's clearly ambiguous. As for those who repent, believe, and do good, it is they who will be admitted into paradise, never being denied any reward. They will be in the gardens of eternity, promised in trust by the most compassionate to his servants. Surely his promise will be fulfilled. Let's do the other cynic here, because obviously I don't believe in magic, whatever magic you want to insist here, whatever supernatural nonsense you want to do. But let's imagine here something I raised in the last one. How would you tell if it was Satan who inspired the Quran versus God? How would you tell? How would you know? And sort of these kinds of things imply to me quite heavily that's what Satan would say. Surely his promise will be fulfilled. Surely I'm not lying to you. Surely I'm telling the truth. Obviously, I couldn't be lying to you. I am the most compassionate, the most merciful, the most kind. And by following me, you're actually obviously following the truth. It was clearly the right path and clearly the straight path. And like, this sounds exactly like what Iblis would say or Satan would say. I'm not sure if there's a difference there. Maybe there is, and I haven't been paying attention. But I don't care. There they will never hear any idle talk, only greetings of peace. Well, I mean, that, to be fair to me, that does sound like heaven. Not having to do small talk anymore, honestly, great. Not sure if that's a good replacement, honestly. As a fiercely combative and contrarian person, having everyone sort of be, oh, peace be upon you, oh, I'm so kind, I'm so kind, like it is a living hell. I mean, I guess that's part of the reason why the sort of community appeal, I called it I wrote an essay where I described Islam as a peer pressure religion, because it's sort of, a lot of it is this sort of group, being a part of a group and identifying yourself with this part of a group and getting the sort of community, as I was speaking about earlier. And these are things that have the opposite effect on me. These are things that make me reject it. So it's a really fascinating thing that this is presented as something positive. Like I'm very glad for this, but this sort of like peace, only peace. No, I don't. A little bit of war, a little bit of word warfare, a little bit of linguistic battling, a little bit of combativeness. There's no, okay, so there were provisions morning and evening. There's no day or night in paradise, only light. Oh, and that's also bad. My favorite part of the day is night. The verse says that, and also light, or darkness. I much prefer the darkness. The verse says that the residents of paradise will either be receiving provisions around these worldly times or without failure. Words such as morning and evening are used to make it easier for the people to understand. This is great because it supports my my belief that all of the prophets, all of the religious leaders, they were actually quite clever, quite intelligent human beings. Much as I criticize and mock and deride them, like I do that with my own heroes. Like I've recently been arguing with Richard Dawkins on, or not directly, but like with sort of his criticisms of like wokeism. I think he's called it in the sort of Alex O'Connor interview recently. The sort of, yeah, I won't go into too much detail about that, but it seems to me, or an idea I've often had, is that these people were genuinely very intelligent. Muhammad was genuinely very intelligent, much as I mock him, much as I think many of the beliefs that people perpetuate that he started were ridiculously stupid. it seems to me much clearer that the people around them couldn't count to 11 or couldn't count to 5 even with the help of their fingers, honestly. It's like the people around him were complete and utter morons at every stage of human development. And this sort of really hammers that point home. It's like, yeah, all of this is written by a smarter person speaking to the stupidest people imaginable. That is what religious books are designed to do, to make you stupid, to make you stop thinking, and then to berate you with the truth over and over. And that is a paradise. Good timing. That is paradise. Make you stop thinking and berate you with the truth over and over. That is paradise, which we will grant to whoever is a devout among our servants. Oh, thank God I'm not going there. Thank you, God, for me not being devout, because I do not want this lovely peaceful valley for the rest of time. I want a little bit of strife, a little bit of argumentation, a little bit of thinking. My apologies for my washing machine. Washing machine is a little bit loud right now, but I hope it will go down a little bit. We only descend by the command of your Lord. To him belongs whatever is before us and whatever is behind us, and everything in between. Your Lord is never forgetful. Right? Who? I completely lost what the context of this was. So it's sort of just talking about the goodness of heaven. It's a very good trick, flipping between the badness of evil, making the false dichotomy seem very, very definite. Here is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and everything in between. So worship him alone and be steadfast in his worship. Do you know of anyone equal to him in his attributes? No. I not even him, fascinatingly enough. Not even God is equal to God in attributes. I guess any individual attributes, sure. But in the sort of context of having all attributes, no. But it's sort of phrased as if that's some interesting point. My imaginary friend is stronger than your imaginary friend. My imaginary friend is as strong as you could possibly imagine. You couldn't even imagine any imaginary friend that's stronger than my imaginary friend. So clearly, if your imaginary friend is also as strong as possible, then it's the same as my imaginary friend. So actually, we believe in the same imaginary friend. Tragic to listen to this, to listen to the children and their tools for trying to understand the world around them. It is quite tragic. There's a little bit of a melancholic moment there, but it's weirdly tragic how similar this is to children trying their best to understand the nature of reality. It's just sort of it has the sort of weird beauty of children's ignorance combined with the horrifying realities of adult self-confidence, adult narcissism. Like people, when you're an adult, you're much less likely to sort of renege on your beliefs and sort of change your views and understand that maybe you've been wrong your whole life. Like you have a lot more to lose. It's sort of a gambler's fallacy situation. You're already very invested on, it's not the gambler's fallacy, it's sunk cost fallacy. You're already very invested in your beliefs, your understanding of morality to be true. It's like, if you tomorrow find out that actually God didn't really care if you ate pork or didn't really care if you got drunk every now and then, it's like, well then, why have I tortured myself? Like, why have I denied myself bacon for so many years? Like, you end up trying to sort of rationalize and justifying your beliefs much more when you're an adult, whereas a child is much more open to. Like, when a child tells me they're fanciful, to make an example, my younger brother once talked to me about how he thought he was still sitting in like a chair in the car, and he talked to me about like the moon. He said the moon was following him. And I tried to explain to him that the moon is very far away, so it doesn't like. And I tried to argue with him actually. I said, well, what about when the moon sets? Like, what about when you can't see the moon? I don't think I won that debate, by the way. 8 years older. That's how you win debates. No, I'm arguing with toddlers. But it's sort of in the same vein here. Is like, well, these ideas were very similarly fanciful and fantastical to the ones I'm reading. It's weird because if I this is for me this is the direction of the text, but this is where it's like if I show this, yeah, there is, well, you can't see my hand. Who cares? But it's a similar sort of vein of children's, a sort of childish way of thinking, of trying to sort of make sense of the universe through very sort of simplistic models that are very recognizable to other things. But it doesn't have the childish curiosity built in behind it. It doesn't have this sort of openness built in behind it. In fact, it does the opposite. It sort of insists on a closedness. It insists on a certainty. It insists on an unwillingness to refine and revise your understanding with time. So it's sort of a little bit of melancholy here, a little bit tragic, a little bit entertaining, a little bit funny, a little bit crazy. Yet some people ask, mockingly, after I die, will I really be raised to life again? Yeah. Yeah. Support these people. Do such people not remember that we created them before? No, I don't. I literally don't. If I did remember, that would really help. If I had memories of being created, that would be very useful. If I had like memories of God creating me and not sort of like, even if I had memories of being a fetus in a womb, then that would just sort of support my already very materialistic view. But if I had actual memories of God fiddling with my bits and being like, well, you're going to be like this, and then a little bit like this, and a little bit like this, a little bit argumentative, a little bit contrarian, a little bit of an asshole, but also too kind to really exploit how much of an asshole you are. It's really annoying, by the way. I'm a massive asshole, but I also feel very, very strongly, a lot of empathy. So it really hurts. I really wish I could be as much of an asshole as I feel in my heart of hearts that I want to be. But no, I don't remember being created before. The implication being that, well, because, like, the implication being an argument of sort of, well, he's powerful enough to do it, so clearly, like, it's not a problem of his power. It's not a problem that God couldn't be powerful enough to do it. And yeah, sure, if you already believe that this God created you, then that makes sense. But if you didn't, then it doesn't make, and it, like, even if you did, like, you can, like, a God who has the power to create life in the first place might not be the same kind of God. Like, you could very easily imagine sort of a lesser, lowercase g God, who one who creates life, one who takes life, and one who, like, resurrects life afterwards. Like, there are different domains of power that you can conceivably have. So, like, even in the context of, like, accepting the viewpoint that you were created, it doesn't really follow. It's not really an interesting observation, or it's not really an interesting thing to point to, especially not because we don't remember. Nobody remembers. Like, literally no human being has ever said, well, I remember what it was like to be created. No, the closest we get is people remember, like, oh, I was born with my faith in God, so that's somehow valid and not just childish nonsense. But yeah, no, it's, do not remember who created them before when they were nothing. Yeah. No. By your Lord, O prophet, we will surely gather. I guess that's an advantage. If you ever read a rhetorical question, answer it. That's how you trick a rhetorical question. By your Lord, O prophet, we will surely gather them along with the devils, and then set them around hell on their knees. Then we will certainly begin by dragging out every group, the ones most defiant to the compassionate. The hellfire sermons, they keep going back. Set them around hell on their knees and drag them out, the most defiant ones, starting with the defiant one. And we truly know best who is most deserving of burning in it. This one's fascinating because it sort of implies that it sort of needs to insist on the veracity of judgment. I mean, maybe this is part of the problem. Like, if you cut out these insistences of we truly know best, like this is definitely the truth, this is definitely truth, you should definitely listen to this because it's definitely true. If you cut out all of these repeated insistences on this being the truth and just sort of get to what actually is written, you could probably half of it. You could probably make it half as long. It's like, maybe I'm being a little bit exaggerating, but at least a third. You could at least cut it down by a third. Like, so much of this text. Obviously, it's better than having to read the lists of who begot who begot who begot who, because that's one of the most tedious things I've ever read in my entire life. But it's such a weird, like, it feels like it feels offensive to me that I'm spending time reading this. I'm actually bothering to put in the effort here, and I get I get thrown in my face. This is definitely the truth. We truly know best. I mean, no, you clearly don't. That's the problem. Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially like talking to God here. Clearly, God doesn't know best. Like, the God being presented to me here clearly doesn't know, because defiance. That's the big one. I understand that being the most defiant to the most compassionate sort of implies, maybe indirectly, that, yeah, because God said all the true moral truths, and all of the moral truths that exist are from God. So, like, being defiant towards moral truths necessarily implies a sort of moral evil. But you could have said that in better phrasing than I did. I need a couple of minutes to phrase that better. But you can, like, communicate the idea that... And actually, no, you can do it even better. Evil deeds, evildoers, wrongdoers. But sort of the idea that defiance here is the key characteristic for who should be born, who is most deserving of burning in hell. That very much implies that God doesn't know best who is truly deserving, because defiance is not a defining characteristic of doing evil. Doing evil is a defining characteristic. Thinking evil, having dark thoughts, having evil thoughts is so much less evil. I would argue even not evil, not amoral rather than immoral. Whereas acts can be immoral or immoral. And so, from what we get here, God clearly does not know best. This disproves the Quran. It doesn't. I know it doesn't. I know. I was being funny. Stop your typing. I can already hear your clickety clacking. There is none of you who will not pass over it. This is a decree your Lord must fill. Extended over hell. Both the believers will made across. The believers across safely, each at different speed according to the strength of their faith. The disbelievers and the hypocrites will plunge into the fire. Plunge into the fire. Who shall not pass? It'll be like the Balrog. I like that also. To be fair, also imagining all living beings on this one bridge, and it's sort of gliding along at different speeds according to the differences of their faith. By the way, it makes a beautiful metaphorical sense. I want to stress this. This is one of the reasons I'm reading this, is the sort of storyteller element. And this is a very fascinating and cool mental image of like the people whose faith was weakest sort of have this final test where they sort of, it's almost like God is showing the people with the weakest faith that their faith was strong enough by making them, like, the people who already had like extremely strong faith, they just flew over, because this, like, what's the point? Like, they will just keep saying for thousands and thousands of years, they'll say, God loves me, God protects me, I'll always have my faith. Like, Job never gave up his faith, if you read the story of Job. I mean, he kind of did. He kind of picked at God a little bit, but he was, if you have people like this who are willing to endure all manner of evil and still sort of insist, no, God is the most righteous, I trust in God. This idea being that these people would easily have cross the bridge, and because they would gain nothing from being held there, they would just keep going for thousands and millions and billions of years. Whereas the people who genuinely struggle, generally like their faith is on thin ice, they sort of, but it's just enough. Like these people will spend a long time on the bridge. They will like experience the constant fear of not having enough faith, this constant fear of failing, essentially, of failing to live up to their own ideals. And this is a beautiful metaphorical image. This really is a beautiful metaphorical, because these are the people, they will learn the most from this ordeal, and the longer they spend there, once they are across, they will realize how strong their faith must have been to endure. Like a person, like imagine me on that bridge. Imagine if I actually turn out to be a true believer. That's too silly. Imagine somebody very much like me, who actually ends up being a true believer, but spends all of their life criticizing, mocking, and deriding, like having really weak faith, but sort of and overcompensating for their weakness. I shouldn't give you these ideas, but like imagine a person like that, and this person then would benefit quite a great deal from, like having, like imagine they spend 1,000 years on this bridge. 1,000,000 years even. Once they get across, they'll look back on this 1,000,000 years and be like, my faith was strong enough to carry me for 1,000,000 years, for longer than the lifetimes of anyone I have ever known. And so the people with the weakest faith will sort of have proof that their faith, even though it was the weakest among the faithful, was still strong enough to bring them to the other side of the bridge. That's still a sort of a beauty in that poetry. Whereas I'm very much expecting me to just sort of jump off at the first opportunity. Honestly, the bridge probably has to have several levels. It has to be very, very good safety rails on it. Then we will deliver those who were devout. So yeah, it's a very, I like these mental images. It's not something a mental image I've had before. It's not something that I've seen a parallel to in religions and cultures I haven't explored, or the religions and cultures I've explored so far. Yeah, I think that you could change it and still have sort of interesting ideas of this sort of bridge of penance in a way, and sort of discovery of your own. Yeah, I mean I'm getting distracted now by thinking about that, but it is fascinating. I like that. I want to appreciate this book when, in the rare occasions that it gives, like 1 out of 70, when it gives me something fun and interesting to read about. Then we will deliver those who were devout, leaving the wrongdoers there on their knees. Cool. Still on my knees. Not great. Not a big fan of kneeling. I'm not sure if that's been clear from how I speak. But yeah, not a big fan of kneeling. I guess that's why I'm forced to kneel. When our clear revelations are recited to them, the disbelievers ask the believers mockingly, which of the two of us is better in status and superior in assembly? Yeah, that's what we do say here in the West. Like, clearly we're doing better than you. Where's your God now, pussies? It's like, yeah. If it seems very much to me that me living as a Norwegian, I'm living in one of the most prosperous, well-off countries in the world. Does it not seem, and also one of the most secular, one of the most atheistic countries in the world? It seems very much to me that the people God loves the most and rewards the most in this life are the people who reject gods. Not the people who go to different gods. Those people are also fucked in many different ways. The people who reject God outright and say that it should be a personal matter, should not have any public importance. Those are the countries that do the best. But yeah, I will certainly mock. But I mean, to be fair also, faith is very appealing to the people who are not doing so well. Who need to sort of, or need to. I think they probably don't need to. I think this is something we do sort of to convince ourselves not to badger them about their like, they've already gone through enough. They don't need to be exposed to someone like me yelling at them for having stupid beliefs. But it's still in the same way. It's like the people who are worse off will sort of believe in things to comfort themselves, comfort through belief, as I called it earlier. comfort themselves in their actually all of the suffering in this life doesn't really matter compared to the sort of infinite pleasures they will have for being a good person, and sort of focus on the things they do have power over. They have the power to choose what kind of person they are, and what kind of legacy they will leave. And that's how I understand it, and that's how I sort of convince myself to do good. Is I just believe that I don't need to believe that God will definitely know what I'm doing. I live in countries that can tell what I'm doing quite easily. And like the law is, while not perfect, it's certainly a very long arm, that law. Fascinating. So yeah, I guess it's unfair to insist or to point out just how much better it is to be secular, because the people who aren't secular are the people who are not doing so well will often stretch towards a belief in God for whatever reason that might be. So yeah. Imagine then, O Prophet, how many peoples we have destroyed before them, who were far better in luxury. But of course, this kind of reflective, philosophical thing that I just did, that's not good for religions, because religions don't want you to think. They just want you to imagine the hellfire. That's how they convince you. That's the title, Imagine the Hellfire. Yeah, imagine how many peoples we have destroyed before them, who were far better in luxury and splendor. Give me one. Exactly one. That's what I need. A single people's civilization. And maybe a person is not exactly what I mean, but like a single group of people who are better in luxury and splendor than Norwegians in the modern age. I'll wait. Because, yeah, I mean, I guess if you believe in many of these other delusional myths, it makes sense. Like Atlanteans, maybe they were better off. Maybe what's the new one? Tartars? The Tartary states? Maybe they had more luxury and splendor. Well, certainly none of the ones we actually believe existed and have evidence for. Only sort of our imagination. Only the imagination. And of course our ability to imagine can easily imagine things being better. Right? Perfect is never achievable. Perfect is always a step ahead. So we can always imagine improvement. Like humans are never satisfied. So I guess that's the use of this rhetorical appeal. You can reject thinking and replace for imagination. Say, O Prophet, whoever is entrenched in misguidance, the most compassionate will allow them plenty of time until, behold, they face what they are threatened with, either the torment or the hour. Only then will they realize who is worse in position and inferior in manpower. Yeah, I mean, it's you'll have your proof at the end. Sure. I mean, this is a sentiment I'm sort of okay with. It's like, yeah, religions do this all the time. They're not. It's sort of to me, this implies. It implies sort of a serenity, an ability to accept that people aren't necessarily like. To accept that you don't really need to care about who follows you and who does the things you do, and like you can sort of focus on your own life, focus on doing your own thing, then move on to other things. They face what they are threatened with, either the torment or the hour. Only then will they realize who is worse in position. Yeah, I mean it's reasonable. Just wait, and it'll be clear. To be fair, like I like to say the same thing. We just wait, and no one will know, because we'll all be dead, and nobody exists after they're dead. So it's like, I guess we know in a sense when we die, because it's all over. It all goes black forever, and our brain no longer exists, and our mind and our soul with it. But yeah, only then will they realize. Fascinatingly, a sort of. Let's not dive into the sort of, can you know something if you don't exist? Weird paradoxes. And God increases in guidance those who are rightly guided. And the everlasting good deeds are far better with your Lord in reward and in outcome. I'm not going to look up that footnote. I think I remember reading it last time, but I don't remember what it said. It was over a week ago. I'm not going to re-watch my own videos. Have you seen, or reread the book either? Have you seen a prophet? Maybe I should have done that actually. Reread the chapters up to this one. I could have done that. Have you seen a prophet, the one who rejects our revelations yet boasts, I will definitely be granted plenty of wealth and children if there is an afterlife? Alas ibn Wa'il, a Meccan pagan who staunchly disbelieved in resurrection. Interesting. Like specifically referring to someone. That's fascinating to me. But yeah, it's something that I've sort of implied a similar idea of. Is like, well, if God truly is good, he's not going to reward you for your tyrannical imposition of sexism and like like usury is one of the sort of things that I hear a lot. It's like apparently that's really bad. Like God is clearly smarter than you are. Like if there is a good God, if God exists and God is good, then I feel like I have better reason to expect praise than the people who mindlessly regurgitate this nonsense. And I've sort of suggested many times that I think more so the test from God seems to be, are you stupid enough to believe in this stuff? Are you stupid enough? Do you have critical thinking? Or do you just follow the thing you've been sort of, the text that sort of insists on its own truthfulness? And sort of, for me, I will accept Mr. Alas ibn Wa'il. I like him. Has he looked into the unseen or taken a pledge from the most compassionate? Have you? Like, oh yes, I have. I was like, how can we know? Why? What if he says he has? Like, okay, I'm going to say I have. I've looked into the unseen and taken a pledge from the most compassionate. And he tells me, you're all assholes. You need to stop following religion. You need to think for yourselves and accept that morality isn't as easy as somebody tells you so. That's not how morality. That's not like when we understand what good and evil is, we understand it better by not having this list of rules to follow, more so by understanding the sort of the complexities and nuances. Like you should not kill, but there are certain examples where you should, where it is justifiable. You should not steal, but maybe it was okay when Aladdin stole to feed poor people. You should not, like all of these, like the nuances of understanding what it is that makes good and evil is better. And so, like I'm saying, I've taken a pledge from the most compassionate. Whether or not that means I've pledged to the most compassionate to preach this gospel to all of you. But no, I think gospel also means truth, funnily enough. But it's sort of, which has the same sort of problems I've been implying here. Truth is truth, insisting on its own truthfulness. But anyone can say, I've looked into this unseen and I've taken a pledge. Now I say I've taken a pledge, and the pledge is that only critical thinkers get to go to heaven. Everyone else, they get to try again. They get to go over and over again. This world, it's kind of a meshing of. I like this idea, so I'm gonna take this moment to share it. A meshing of the ideas of sort of resurrection and rebirth and sort of that, combining it with the ideas of. I just looked at my clock. Sorry, I got distracted by how long I've been spending on this. But I'm going to edit it. That's right. I'm going to be more productive. Yeah, so I think I got massively distracted. Yeah. So if I just say I've taken a pledge, and the pledge is, the pledge is critical thinking gets rewarded, gets sent to heaven. There is no hell, but there is an infinity of this. This earth continues forever. I've been born 1,000 times before, and every single time I ended up believing ridiculously in this nonsense. And so eventually I'll grow up and stop. But and maybe this is the run. Maybe this finally, I've taken a pledge from God, and finally after this I will get to go to heaven, where all of the critical thinkers are, and where none of the religious zealots are. The religious zealots, they get to go again. And that's why it's so shit. It's actually quite a nice modern world. Not at all. We certainly record whatever he claims and will increase his punishment extensively. Yep. Ditto. Same about you, Muhammad. God is recording all you've said, and he's gonna keep you going until you stop being stupid. And we will inherit what he boasts of, and he will come before us all by himself. Okay. They have taken other gods instead of God, seeking strength and protection through them. Or understanding, like using the forces of nature. Okay, yeah, other gods are also stupid. But no, those gods will deny their worship and turn against them. Those gods don't exist, you blithering idiot. Like, I understand that Muhammad is speaking to people who did genuinely believe they existed, so it's this sort of my gods are stronger than your gods nonsense. But it's such a... I'm so curious how... whether or not, like, people... like, what would Muhammad genuinely do if most of the people around him were atheists rather than pagans? Like, how would the phrasing of this be? Because obviously a lot of the things I've reacted to aren't really addressed at me. They're addressed at people who sort of take other gods, like, say, pretend that the wind is actually a god, and if they sacrifice their firstborn child to the winds, then they'll get more harvest next year. Like, yeah, obviously I think these people are evil morons. Like, these people all, like, definitely a problem. I'm very happy that Muhammad made there be less of those people. However, but I'm very curious. What is... It leaves me in this fascinating dearth of actually, like, dealing with actual useful criticism. I don't know. I should mute my phone. Oh, interesting. But yeah. But no, those gods will deny their worship. Yeah. Do you, or Prophet? Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, those gods will not deny their worship but turn against them. They don't exist. They are figments. They are exactly as real as this God. I guess that's what this book is saying as well. Do you, O Prophet, not see what we have sent the devils against the disbelievers, constantly inciting them? Well, doesn't this work both ways? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm so incited. I mean, I'm incited to read, I guess. This is one of those moments where I really want to pick at the exact word choice here. So maybe we should look it up, because maybe he has chosen... I've noticed that the word choice between this clear Quran, I think, is awful, which is why I started reading this one instead, and why I started using that translation, but unfortunately it was also awful. So 84, 83. Yeah. Do you not see how we set evil ones on disbelievers to incite them? Okay. So do not be hasty against them, for indeed we are closely counting down their days. Watch for the day we will gather the righteous before the most compassionate as an honoured delegation. I had a weird idea. I'm going to try that for the next episode. Watch for the day we will gather the righteous before the most compassionate as an honoured delegation, and drive the wicked to hell like a thirsty herd. None will have the right to intercede except those who have taken a covenant from the most compassionate. None will be allowed to intercede except those who firmly... Yeah. You definitely believe, firmly believe, that there is only one God, then you will be allowed to defend the tyrant. God speaks. They say the most compassionate... Oh yeah, the pagans. Most compassionate has offspring. God has offspring. Pagans claim that angels are God's daughters. The Christians claim that Jesus... Yeah, okay. I mean, they also claim like we're God's children. Like it's weirdly, like, I think overstressing what is in a large part sort of metaphorical. Like when people say, when Christians say, like Jesus was the Son of God, they sort of mean he was the avatar of God. Like he was God made flesh. Like as much of divinity as you can pour into a human mold, that was Jesus. Like, yeah, saying he's the Son of God sort of implies a weird sort of sexual relationship between God and Mary, but that's not actually what they're implying. It's very much sort of sticking to this metaphor, and it makes sense. Or I'm assuming it makes sense in the context of the pagans who claim that angels are the children, the daughters of God. That kind of makes sense, but it also probably makes sense in the context of them being very sexist. The pagan societies, apparently, as I read, I mean, I read it in the Quran book, so let's take it with a grain of salt. But it says to the effect that they would leave their daughters out to die in the desert, like in a sort of similar vein to, or as I interpreted, in a similar vein to the sort of Chinese one-child policy, where a lot of female children were abandoned or even outright murdered because the sort of, well, we only get one kid. We're going to spend our one kid on a son because the son can have a job and sort of protect and help us. And so in a similar way, I kind of expect that pagans did something like that in a very sort of patriarchal, oppressive, sexist society. They killed children. But in this context, I'm wondering if, in its essence, when they say like God's daughters, like their sacrifice was giving their children away to God, isn't it more like isn't a more reasonable interpretation of this as a metaphor again? In the same way that Jesus thing was obviously a metaphor, isn't it then they gave their children, their daughters, to God, and so they became God's daughters? It doesn't necessarily have to mean that God has daughters. It means that the daughter's in possession of God, right? But then again, I don't know what the pagan beliefs of the Arab Peninsula was. I'm pretty sure that nobody else does, because I'm pretty sure they were purged quite dramatically by the Muslims in various different periods of their existence. To be fair, I don't know that. To be exacting, I have no specific knowledge about genocidal campaigns in the Arabian Peninsula. I just know how empires work, and empires tend to be a little bit repressive. But yeah, no, it seems to me to reject this sort of phrasing seems to reject an inherent metaphorical interpretation of things, or of other religions, taking its other religions literally. Maybe that's what's good about the Quran. It seems to take itself very literally all of the time, and that's also what's awful about all religions. They seem to take themselves very literally all of the time. You've certainly made an outrageous claim, always. By which the heavens are about to burst, the earth split apart, mountains are crumbled to pieces, in protest of attributing children to the most compassionate. Not also an argument. Again, I do love the poetry of it. I love like exclaiming it's so outrageous that I'm surprised that the world isn't, that your tongue doesn't curl up into your mouth and explode. Like, it's so outrageous, the thing you said. It's so outlandish. But if you think about it, what is being said here, and like, you cut through all the fancy words, which I'm a good weaver of fancy words. That's how I know how to cut through them. If you cut through all of these fancy words, you think what it's saying is an appeal to incredulity. It's saying, it's impossible. How could you make such an outrageous claim? How absurd isn't your belief? How absurd isn't it to believe that this nonsense was written by God? You can make the same sort of like poetic language about that. Like, if I say, you certainly have made an outrageous claim by which the heavens are about to burst, the earth about to split apart, mountains to crumble to pieces in protest of claiming that God hates bacon. Right? you can make the same sort of phrasing, and it just it doesn't necessarily change the value of the argument. Yeah. It does not befit the majesty of the most compassionate to have children. Again, it's just an appeal to incredulity. There is none in the heavens or the earth who will not return to the most compassionate in full submission. Not return to the most. I mean, we'll never know, because unfortunately, in my view, I expect to just die and never experience anything ever again when I die. That the death is the end of everything. But this sort of idea that I will be in full submission, like if there is a God, there will be no submission, except by the apparently his own words that I'll be forced to kneel, which honestly does not count as full submission. It's not how submission works, honestly. You gotta kind of be willing for full submission. Not just the force of somebody who's chained. The submission of somebody who does not need chains. Indeed, he fully knows them and has counted them precisely. What? Fully knows who? All of us? There is none in the heaven who will not return. He knows them and has counted them precisely. Each of them will return to him on the day of judgment. I mean, from the context, it seems like he's talking about us, but it's like them. Them? What a strange phrasing. Let's look it up. 95. It does not befit the Lord of mercy to have offspring. There is no one in the heavens and earth who will not come to the Lord of mercy as a servant. He has counted them all. He has numbered them exactly. They will each return to him on the day of resurrection, all alone. Weird phrasing to start talking about them. Interesting. Anyway, and as for those who believe and do good, the most compassionate will certainly bless them with genuine love. Oh my god, it's so stupid, and it's so okay. I should explain before we move on. There's this thing called unconditional love. And that's what we mean when we talk about genuine love for people. We talk about unconditional love. What's being described here is called conditional love. And this is a really big thing, which I've struggled to phrase properly. There are human beings who are better than God, who are more moral, more kind. My own teachers, my own parents, there are human beings who are better, who have genuine love for me, who have genuinely treated me with more compassion, kindness, respect, and dignity than God has ever treated anyone with, and certainly than God is telling me to be treated. None of them would have demanded my slavery, demanded my supplication, demanded that I sing their praises, demanded that I do not speak ill of them. No, indeed. None of them. At least not the ones I like, not the ones worthy. Like, there are better human beings. This God is not even, he's far away from being perfect or good or most compassionate, most merciful, most benevolent. He's less merciful, less compassionate, and less benevolent than human beings I have met and spoken to. Because, and as we see here, this most compassionate being is only capable of conditional love. There are people in my life who have shown me unconditional love. And clearly then, God is lesser than even mortal beings. Beings who will not come to protect me in the day of judgment, but beings who by all counts whose weight of their kindness and compassion are greater. I mean, I guess maybe it makes sense, because the most compassionate will certainly bless them. If he genuinely was the most compassionate, and this wasn't just something you said to placate your abusive God, maybe we wouldn't have a problem. Indeed, we have made this Quran easy in your own language, O Prophet, so with it you may give good news to the righteous and warn those who are contentious. And warn those who are contentious. Yeah, it's the sort of the balance here. It's good news, like the comfort to the believers. You are believers, you're true believers. Keep doing what you do, and you'll go to heaven. And sort of the warning to those who aren't. And like again, as sort of political moral philosophy, it makes sense. You want to enforce conformity in your new political organ, in your new empire you're building, new state you're designing. To sort of given the context where this happened, you'd need a sort of quite a powerful state to compete with the people in the region, with the Persians and the Byzantines. I don't know if it was what the Persian Empire was called at the time. But yeah, and like the Byzantines and stuff like that. But yeah, the dichotomy being to give good, like tell the people who believe of heaven and tell the people who don't believe of hell. That's sort of the goal of the Prophet, not to reflect on the nature of goodness. Imagine how many peoples we have destroyed before them. Do you still see any of them, or even hear from them the slightest sound? And if that wasn't an appeal to ignorance, I don't know what is. Yeah, sorry there was a long break. Obviously I can't necessarily spend all of my time and effort on this at the moment, but yeah, it was I'm not stopping. Don't worry, I'm still here. I'm coming back. I have some ideas to make it so that I can consistently, to avoid the sort of health problem break, I'm going to try and record 2 surahs today. And I say that looking at my clock and seeing, oh, I've recorded for almost 2 hours. How the hell did that happen? I was going faster in the last episode. But this is more sort of reflective and thoughtful and sort of delving into the philosophies of it, and while also examining why I think it's so poisonous. But yeah, I'm going to try and make it so that I record 2 videos every day, or 2 surahs every day I'm feeling good, and then whenever I'm not feeling good, I can post those. I'll have a little bit of a backlog, and that will be helpful. Also, I'm considering, I haven't decided yet, I think, because I don't really want to, I've done like live streams, and a lot of people that come in there to discuss religion, and I'm like, I don't care enough about this. I'm reading the Quran because it's fascinating fictional literature. Like I'm interested in literature. Like the Dawkins quote, you don't have to believe in God to believe in architecture. Like or to like churches, you don't need to believe in architecture. Like in the same way, I believe in literature. I believe in fiction and storytelling, and these devices are very interesting to me. And so I want to read this, and so I'm enjoying reading this. And so tragically, I should perhaps have realized that once I start reading like this mockingly and not mockingly or curiously or whatever, I should have realized how much this would appeal mostly to Muslims and not to my fellow Islamophobes, I should say. But I didn't, and here we are. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna stop or calm down streaming for a little bit. But if I do go back, I'm going to not. Actually, I've been rambling too much. The point I was trying to make is I think I'm going to have, after I've read the whole of the Quran, I intend to set up a date where I do a live stream on YouTube where I can talk through all of my thoughts about this, you can tell me how the hadiths prove the hadiths or whatever nonsense you want to do, and then we can get it all through, and then I can start on something else entirely, because I don't want, I'm done with it. I was done with religion like 10 years ago. This is honestly tedious. Or it is tedious when I think about it as religion. When I think about it as fiction, it's great, it's fun. That's interesting metaphors. Interestingly, weirdly, like weird ways of thinking and weird ways of rhetoric, weird methods of sort of presenting your ideas, and that's fascinating to me. But when I think about it as religion, it is really tedious. So I'm gonna try not to do that, but I am to satisfy those of you who feel like they might want to sort of correct me on all of my mistakes and sort of make me realize I intend to give you a live stream, but it's not going to be like I could have done that once a week. That would have been cleverer. If I was smart boy, I would have done that. I would have done like once or a day, like I did in the beginning, and then a live stream on like the end of the week where I talk about all my thoughts, and then I could do that. That would have been a good strategy. At this point, I'm gonna try and focus on just getting the videos out, and because the streaming stuff, especially talking about religion, was just too much. If I'm gonna stream, I'm gonna do dumber, less interesting things. But yeah, thank you. See you tomorrow.